You know, the principles we mentioned before of dan l'chav zchus, of giving people the benefit of the doubt, and choshe b'chsherim, the prohibition against suspecting those who are otherwise kosher, are based on one of two principles. Either the principle of rov, and in Jewish law we follow the majority. The majority of people are good. So I have to assume that this person is part of the rov. He's part of the majority. Or the principle that every individual has a cheskas kashrus, a legal presumption of being kosher, of being moral, of being ethical, of being appropriate. And all Jews, rachmanim, baishanim, gomlei chasadim, we are all merciful, we're all modest, we're all magnanimous, and that's the chazakah of being a Jew. And that's the presumption that has to be made about everyone, especially family members, neighbors, fellow Orthodox Jews, and certainly rabbis and rebbeim. But we've heard that 95% of child molesters are known to the children, the parents, who children have to honor, older siblings, neighbors, teachers, rabbis. It's usually someone who is known. And then there's pressure. I don't want to believe him. I can't believe it about Rabbi so-and-so. I can't believe it about my brother-in-law. I can't believe it about this important person in the community. And yet, the halacha in this case is not dan l'chav zchus. Give him the benefit of the doubt. It always bothered me. What about giving the kid the benefit of the doubt? Who deserves it? But not to give him the benefit of the doubt, because you know what? We know that these things happen. And we know that they happen in numbers larger than we'd like to admit. And we know that it happens by people who are otherwise deemed to be by the community, look from the outside, as fine, upstanding, moral, ethical, from individuals. Maseches Kala. La'olam yiyu kol adam be'einecha kilistim v'kabdam k'Rabbi Gamliel. How do you approach a person? Says the Brisa in Maseches Kala. A person, kol adam, every individual should always be suspect in your eyes. Not innocent until proven guilty, but perhaps guilty until proven innocent. And yet at the same time, they are to be given kavod and be treated respectfully as if they were a great rabbi. Respect, but suspect. And the Maseches Kala gives some interesting and fascinating stories of people who were not doormats and did not open themselves to be taken advantage of by others, and eventually were saved and were protected as a result of that. Secondly, when it comes to sexual matters, says the Gemara, ein apotropos la'arayos, no one is trusted when it comes to matters of sexual behavior. And so the Torah imposes upon us the Isur of Yichud, a prohibition of being alone with a member of the opposite sex in many circumstances, no matter who it is, no matter who you are, because everyone has that possibility. So much so that the Rambam, based on the Gemara, and then the Shulchan Aruch paskins as well, that we do not appoint afilu adam ne'eman, even an otherwise trustworthy person, adam ne'eman v'kasher, who's otherwise appropriate and respected, lihiyos shomer chatzer sheyesh sham nashim, af al pi shu omed b'chutz she'ein apotropos la'arayos. Man is not appointed to be a guard of the woman's dormitory, even if he otherwise has no reason to suspect him. It's just not done. The Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch continue, Asur l'tamid chacham lishkon b'chatzer sheyesh ba'almana, af al pi she'eino misyachid imav ibnei achshad. A man, a tamid chacham, a rabbi, is not permitted to live alone in a common courtyard with a single woman who is not his wife, unless his wife happens to be there and all kinds of things. Even though, from the outside, he's respected, he has integrity, he's a Talmud Chacham. I'm not here to pick on rabbis. I happen to like them in many, many ways. But even individuals who would otherwise give the benefit of the doubt, even individuals who would otherwise say there's no reason to suspect him, the halacha says that everyone has to be suspect, and everyone has to be careful. After all human beings, small and great, have the Yetzer Hara. have an evil inclination that leads in all kinds of directions. We heard a little bit about the psychological makeup of predators. For whatever it is, whether it's poor impulse control or their psychological and mental health issues by which they're challenged, biological or psychosocial histories that are the causes of these things, predisposal for all kinds of antisocial behaviors, there may be reasons that anybody could be affected by these and therefore be predisposed to act out in these manners. And just being a Talmid Chacham, just learning Torah, is not necessarily the antidote. Because the Torah, although it was given to purify us and to help us fight that Yetzer Hara, it can be a Sam Chayim, it can be that elixir of life, but it can also be a Sam Maves, an elixir of death. We have many examples throughout rabbinic literature of even great people who were suspected and who were warned and who people had their eye on because they were concerned about otherwise inappropriate behavior. And so the Kohen Gadol, before he entered the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, was warned by the Zekanim, make sure you follow the ritual properly. And the Kohen Gadol cried for being suspected, and then they cried for having to suspect him, but every year they warned him. The Gemara says in Bava Metzia, Lamed Aleph, Hocheach, Tochiach, and the obligation of rebuking another person who may be doing something wrong, Hocheach, Tochiach. So says the Gemara, we know that it's the job and the responsibility of a teacher to rebuke his student, but then Talmud L'Rav Minai, and how do you know that even a student has the obligation to rebuke his teacher? Hocheach, Tochiach, Mikol Makom. The doubling of that verb means for everyone under all circumstances. And so while there is concern about the reputation of the community, and while there is concern about respect for others, and while there is concern about respect for rebbes and other individuals, there are biblical obligations of lo samaro damrayecha, not to stand by when someone else is in trouble, a prohibition of ona'as devarim, of verbally and emotionally abusing and oppressing another individual, of pikuach nefesh, of saving a person both, as we heard, physically, but spiritually as well. And the obligation comes first and foremost to children. The pasuk says, Al tigu b'mishichai, don't touch my anointed ones, my little Mashiachs, don't touch my anointed ones. Uvinvi'ai al tareyu, and don't deal evilly and badly with my prophets. Who are Mishichai? Who are the anointed ones? Says the Gemara. This refers to the Tinokos Shel Beis Rabban. This refers to little children. And the flow of the verse is important. The verse first says, don't touch the children, uvinvi'ai al tereyu, and don't do harm to my teachers and to my rabbis. But children come first. Says the Gemara in Brachos, kol makom sheyesh chilul Hashem, in chokin kavod l'rav, when there is a desecration of God's name, then one respects no one, because it is the ultimate goal, it is the ultimate, it would be the ultimate violation of God's presence and the viability of Torah in the world if we overlook the harm and damage that is done that causes the Chilul Hashem, all in the name of Torah, all in the name of God, all in the name of protecting the community. This is the Gemara as well in Yoma, Pei Vavam and Aleph, in describing what it is a Chilul Hashem. A person is from and is a Talmid Chacham, and but he's not dealing properly in business and with other people. Doesn't speak nicely to other individuals. And so if you're not a mensch, you're not honest in business, and that causes the Chilul Hashem, how much more so when it's sexually and physically and emotionally violating a child. What do people say about him? Woe to so-and-so who studied to learn Torah. Woe to his father and mother who taught him Torah. Woe to his teachers who taught him Torah. If this is Torah, and this is the kind of person that it makes, what's Torah about? So our obligation is to the safety and welfare of our children, body and soul. And our obligation is for the safety and welfare of our community, physically, but spiritually as well. And when little children are allowed to be abused, and we don't speak out because we're concerned about the newspapers, we're concerned about airing dirty laundry in public, In fact, we're creating a Chilul Hashem, which is undermining everything that Torah was meant to stand for. Says the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Kol mi sheyesh biyado limchos ve'eno mocha ne'enash alav. Anyone who has the opportunity to protest, anyone who has the opportunity to change things and doesn't do so is punished because of that. You know, it's just for modern cultural reference, if there are any Seinfeld fans out here, I just refer you to the last episode, the two-part episode. Enough said. What happened there was in the without going into all the details of that particular episode, but Jerry and his friends are arrested because they see somebody who's being attacked and they don't do anything about it. And the defense attorney gets up, and this is in Boston because in Massachusetts is one of the few states in the United States in which there's actually an affirmative obligation to interfere and to involve yourself if somebody needs help. He gets up and says, my clients were innocent bystanders. Did you ever hear of a guilty bystander? By definition, a bystander is innocent. Now, that may be true in 46 states in the United States. That is not true according to Torah. Lo ta'amod adam re'echa means that you can't be a bystander. You can't stand on the blood of someone else without doing something, and if you do, you're guilty. In halacha, by definition, a bystander is guilty. And so while we heard about mandated reporters, which are generally individuals who have some kind of professional relationship with the child, teachers and therapists and camp counselors, whatever it may be, but not the neighbor and not the parent necessarily, according to halacha, we are all mandated reporters. We cannot keep silent. We cannot keep quiet. It says the Meiri in explaining this Gemara, the violation of not reporting is not just the failure to report. The violation of not intervening is not just the failure of intervening. But writes the Meiri, Nitbas hu min hashamayim ki ilu hu asa. When we don't report abuse, it's as if we ourselves abused that child because we allowed the abuse to continue. And we allowed that perpetrator to abuse other innocents. We are equally guilty. Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote an essay with the title, Few Are Guilty, All Are Responsible. Well, we're all responsible. But according to the Meiri, not just few are guilty. If they all are not responsible, then all are guilty. Thank you.